What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday. And good news, I found the time to get it done. The response was so overwhelming that I went out of my way to make sure it got done because I'm for you, the people. How's everybody? Everybody's good? Off to a good weekend. Looking forward to Memorial Day and all that stuff. I hope so. Not a whole lot to discuss from this past week. There is some stuff regarding MMC's feet that we will talk about a bit during this. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what the answer is going to be here. I think they're going to be pretty close, but I don't know. I'm going to wait and see how it turns out the same as you. I'm looking forward to doing it. There's not a whole lot to keep us from just jumping into it, so what do you say we jump into it? Before I do so, I do want to say that I try to be as objective regarding this as possible. Some of this stuff just comes down to subjectivity. Some of it, there's no mathematical equation to decide what is right and what is wrong. Some of it has to be left up to us. Some stuff is objective. Is the range of the elbow greater on one than the other? If so, then that one wins. Some of it, like Sculpt, is just a matter of what I prefer, and since I'm making the video, I get to choose. With that being said, let's get started. And we'll start with accessories. So both come with the gun, both come with the sword. The Fanstoys comes with two swords that you can have, the green one and the silver one, which is nice. It's a smart way of doing it, and it's very kind of taking into account people's tastes and appreciation regarding the character from different scenes and different modes. I also prefer the sculpt of the Fanstoys weapon, but it's a very minor detail, right? The truth is that MMC comes in with two additional heads, giving you both the Ocular Max and G1 options, as well as the spear from Season 3, the missile from the film, and then the adapters that allow the weapons to be displayed in both vehicle modes. So, in my opinion, the MMC one slaughters the Fanstoys one in regard to accessories. Gimmicks-wise, MMC has them, Fanstoys really doesn't. So you got to give it to MMC. And the truth is that MMC has a fair amount of them as well. Headlights, shoulder options, etc. They just took more into account. In terms of build and materials, I think they're both built very well. I think they both use great materials. They both seem super sturdy. In terms of hardware, the Fanstoys takes the cake with ratchets in the shoulders, ratchets in the knees, making for a far more stable figure in terms of posing. And that's objective. That's a number of counting. Now we're going to begin with the sculpt and paint segment. And I think that they both do a pretty good job across the board. But we're here to nitpick, so let's nitpick. But before we do, I think they're both proportionately well built. But just looking at outer aesthetics, I do like the Fanstoys' presence more. But I must admit that part of that might be the size and that he is a bit bigger, and that might be technically wrong. So it does get a little tricky there. Let's begin. Paint-wise, the Fanstoys has more. Sculpt-wise, I think the Fanstoys is more on the mark. Now, the MMC one does have the optional ox head, which I think is a nice touch and a very cool approach to satisfying everyone. But there's something more polished and more distinguished about the eyes, especially on the Fanstoys one, and I feel like the face looks a little too wide in the Springer for MMC. The torso on the Fanstoys comes with plenty of paint applications, as does the MMC. The black on the MMC is a little too cartoony for my taste, where I prefer the natural shadows of the Fanstoys one. It also says something about the pronounced chest versus abdomen area of the Fanstoys one as well, whereas the MMC one wouldn't have been able to pull off those shadows because of the sculpt. And finally, of course, as I've stated in my reviews, I prefer having the abdomen area on the Fanstoys one rather than the block chest and abdomen area of the MMC one. The MMC one's more G1 cartoon accurate. That's where we get into where I wish these toys would stray. From the side, I don't think that either necessarily stand out. I think perhaps the MMC one is cleaner, but I could also make the argument that the backpack for the Fanstoys is cleaner. So I think this is pretty much fair game. Arm-wise, from the front, I like the more pronounced shoulder pads on the MMC one. However, the Fanstoys one is far cleaner in regard to the bicep and forearm. As a result, though, it loses the double joint for the elbow. But if we're talking sculpt and paint, the Fanstoys one is going to come on top in this regard, so to speak. From the side, the Fanstoys one slaughters the MMC. It's just cleaner, sharper, looks less like a transforming toy and more like it doesn't transform. It's probably one of the same things that makes the transformation more frustrating, but you have to admit that it looks better. Hips and pelvis, might as well throw the thighs in. I like the sculpt work on the Fanstoys, both in the pelvis area and in the thighs. I also like the shape of the pelvis. so to speak, on the Fanstoys one, where the MMC one kind of looks more like bikini trunks, how the line curves up instead of straight across. Is it nitpicky? Of course. Does either one bother me? Absolutely not. But if we're being nitpicky and we're zeroing and dialing in on every detail, I gotta go with the Fanstoys. However, I like the finish of the MMC better in regard to that area, especially the thighs. From the side, it's pretty much the same thing, and they both have the plugs in the side of them, so to speak. But I prefer the sculpt work on the Fanstoys. I prefer the finish on the MMC. As for the lower legs, I think the MMC really pulls it off. It's very clean and has sculpted detail. There's also something richer about the color. However, I do prefer the proportions of the feet on the Fanstoys, but there's no denying that MMC does this better in my opinion. It's cleaner, it's sculpted well, it's not G1 to a fault, it has some maturity, it's really well done. And to be honest, there's no different on the side as well. Now the one thing I do like about the Fanstoys in this regard is the sculpted detail. All the stuff around the propellers, the added blade going up the leg, I like stuff like that. But the wings on the Fanstoys are too big. They're almost distracting. Actually, let's take the almost off of that and just admit they are distracting. Whereas the MMC are far cleaner. However, I do prefer the feet on the Fanstoys from the side as well. But I think overall, we have to give it to the MMC on this one. From the back, I think the MMC one takes the cake as well. Don't get me wrong, I think there are things the Fanstoys does better. For instance, the shoulders and arms, I like the wheels on the back personally. But the backpack, even though it sticks out, I think further on the MMC, looks more compact when looking at it, especially from the back. And the back of the legs is far less distracting on the MMC than it is on the Fanstoys. It also doesn't have the butt flap, which the Fanstoys does. So I think it's a clear winner in that regard. I think paint-wise, they're pretty much tied. Some places are better on the Fanstoys, some places are better on the MMC, but both have enough that it makes it detailed, interesting to look at, and a nice clean finish. Sculpt-wise is where, once again, Fanstoys is a hard one to contend with. In my opinion, they take the head, torso, arms overall, hips, and the overall front presentation of the figure, whereas MMC takes the lower legs and the back. Articulation-wise, the head on the MMC has a wide range up, a double hinge down, and then the 360. Apache, you got some up, you got some down, and you got the 360. Shoulders on the MMC has a slight butterfly, 360, and a hinge past 90 degrees. You also get the outward movement. Fanstoys has the 360, up to 90 degrees, not really any outward movement. Saltus has the 360 bicep swivel and a double hinged elbow. Fanstoys has the 360 bicep and a single hinged elbow to only 90 degrees. Saltus has a wrist swivel, hinge up and down, fingers on a base pen knuckle with the thumb and index finger being fully articulated. Fanstoys has the 360 wrist swivel with every finger individually articulated. Saltus has the waist swivel and ab crunch. Fanstoys has a ratcheted waist swivel, no ab crunch. Saltus has the full Monty and the full Van Dam with a thigh swivel at a cut joint. Apache has a little shy of the full Van Dam and shy of the full Monty with a cut swivel at the thigh joint. Saltus has a double jointed knee that gets you all the way around to the back. Fanstoys has a double jointed knee that get you all the way around to the back as well, but you do get some clunking against the kibble. So there was a point of contention with my review regarding his ankles, and we'll talk about it. He does have an ankle rocker. It's a fair range. It gets you to there and there. People were saying that if you extend the foot, which I missed, it's not in the instructions, by the way, that you can get more of an ankle rocker. You really can't. It's not that that's keeping the ankle from moving it, and it's a fair range as is. It's just not an exceptional range. You do get an ankle tilt up and ankle tilt down, but once again, it's not that really has the impact. Like, it's still the same planes hitting against one another. What has the impact is moving this piece below this plane. That'll get you a bit more. The problem with that is that then it puts it off center, so he'll always kind of be leaning back if you were to utilize that. But it's still a fair ankle rocker. Apache has an ankle tilt down, an ankle tilt up, slight. It's more slight than the MMC one, and an ankle rocker that doesn't quit. It is a bit of a cut joint, but you're going to be able to get him all the way out to the side. So to summarize
They both tie in the bicep, thighs, and knees department. Fanstoys takes the lead in the hands and ankles department, and MMC crushes them in the head, shoulders, elbow, wrists, torso, and hips department, making MMC the clear winner in regard to articulation.
In terms of G1 accuracy, I think it's a mixed bag, but certain things stand out to me. I think the shoulders, ironically, look more G1 on the MMC. I think the chest looks more G1 on the Fanstoys, and I think the abdomen area looks more G1 on the MMC. Both do a decent job on the thighs, but I think the lower legs are more G1 accurate on the MMC. So although subjectively I prefer the look of the Fanstoys, I have to say, looking at this, the MMC one is more accurate. Ironically though, I don't think either of them got the colors quite right.
Scale-wise, neither one of them are 100% accurate. And I also, you know how I believe that scale is in the eye of the beholder, but the Fanstoys one is significantly larger than Takara Tomi's Rodimus. However, he does appear to be about the right size for Takara Tomi's Hot Rod, so it might be possible that Rodimus is too small. It also appears that MMC's Springer is slightly too small, but we're picking hairs, so ultimately I have to give it to MMC. I think that it's closer and more accurate. We all know the inconsistencies of that model. The engineering is really where MMC shines. It smashes the Fanstoys because it does everything kind of effortlessly with an intuitive nature, an element that just can't be paralleled. It just shows what an elegant transformation can look like between three modes. Now, you can argue that because of that, it causes aesthetic sacrifices, and I would definitely agree. But if we're isolating the engineering in regard to the transformation and looking at it objectively, there really is no comparison. And it's not a matter of one being involved and the other one not be. The MMC one is involved and fun and polished. The Fanstoys one is involved and cumbersome, clumsy, and frustrating. Of course, that's subjective, but as I said, sometimes those lines get blurry. In regard to the car modes, neither one of them pull it off perfectly, and both of them choose this mode specifically to take the most sacrifices in regard to the three. However, I think Fanstoys is more accurate. I think it is more indicative and more in the spirit of the car mode for the character. Now, it looks like somebody heated it up and grabbed it at both ends and stretched it across the table, but it still looks like the car is supposed to look. MMC's, on the other hand, doesn't. It's kind of somewhat reminiscent of the car mode, but it's too far of a stretch. It's too far of a stretch from the original model and what the car is supposed to actually look like. The perfect choice here would to have a car that looked like the Fanstoys one that was the size of the MMC one. That's the car that would satisfy both, but neither really do it. One gets the look, one gets the size. When comparing helicopter mode, the race is a lot closer. However, I think Fanstoys does it better. I think the exhaust placement on the top of the vehicle, how thin the rear of the vehicle becomes, and how much more polished and kind of helicopter-y looking it is. I know that sounds ridiculous, but what I mean is the MMC one looks like a robot in a helicopter mode. The Fanstoys one looks like a helicopter. And obviously I don't mean a real helicopter, but a believable helicopter vehicle from a Cybertronian or alien planet. But I think both do a good job of pulling it off. I just think that Fanstoys is more effective. Which brings us to our final scores. Fanstoys and MMC tied in the build, materials, and paint categories. Fanstoys takes the lead in hardware, sculpt, alt modes, and presence, but MMC takes the lead in accessories, gimmicks, articulation, scale, transformation, price, and accuracy if we're looking at the G1 model, giving a final score of 7-4 MMC. And I wonder how many people's predictions were proved wrong regarding my bias.
I'm surprised. I'm legitimately surprised. I thought it would be close. I thought MMC might edge it out, but looking at the numbers, MMC crushed it. I think what's interesting about this and what we need to take into consideration is this really plays back into the conversation we had a couple weeks ago. The question becomes, do I switch out my Fanstoys for the superior one regarding the number score? The answer is absolutely not. Because what this won in, sculpt, presence, hardware, those are the things that end up mattering most to me. I need the sculpt and the presence to be strong because I'm displaying this stuff. I need the hardware to be there because I like to put them in poses from time to time on my display. Some elements that this wins, in my opinion, regarding alt modes doesn't matter to me. But most of the things that this wins doesn't ultimately matter to me. The one that I would have liked to have seen this one won would have been articulation. But it didn't. This comes down to the discussion we had a couple weeks ago. This is the ideal toy for the tinkerer, the player, etc., etc. This is the ideal toy for the photographer, perhaps, or the displayer. This one can fit into that photography element as well. So that is, I couldn't have found two better examples to make that point. Neither one are bad, neither one are perfect, neither one would be a bad addition to your collection. They're both fantastic, they just do different things better than the others. This one does a lot more right than this one. Thanks for listening, thanks for watching, until next time, take care.